The film, The Drowned Giant, opens with three scientists walking toward the beach, where an incredible discovery has captured the attention of the townspeople. One of Stephen's colleagues narrates this strange tale. Just a couple of days ago, a massive storm struck the sea. In its wake, a dead giant washed up on the shore. When fishermen spotted the giant, they were completely shocked. They quickly notified the police, but no one believed their story. The giant's presence became more of a rumor, a spectacle people visited out of curiosity. People talked about what they had seen, but very few dared to touch or go near the giant, too fearful of what it might mean. Stephen and his team decided to see it for themselves. Standing in awe before the enormous body, they began to study it. The weight of the giant was estimated at around 80 tons. Stephen, observing his features, especially the eyes and nose, guessed that he might be a young giant. As they studied the body, Stephen approached the giant's hand, so large it held rainwater like a pond. Small fish swam within it. The most astonishing realization wasn't the giant's size, but the implication that these beings might still exist. The people on the beach, when compared to the giant, appeared like incomplete replicas of him, pale imitations. One of Stephen's colleagues climbed onto the giant and assured the onlookers that it was safe. Encouraged by this, people began to climb onto the giant's body. Some played, others bounced joyfully across his limbs. Stephen, however, remained reserved, refusing to touch or climb the giant. While his colleagues took notes, people gradually lost interest and stopped visiting. 3 days later, Stephen returned, his curiosity deepening. He found some children sliding on the giant's body while a few others prepared to cut it. Wanting solitude, Stephen stayed late to observe. The once impressive body was now decaying, its features becoming distorted. A girl was sitting on the giant's ear, using it as a chair. The youthful appearance of the giant had faded, the skin damaged by prolonged exposure to the sea. Stephen saw an insect crawling across the giant's face and into his mouth. The decay was accelerating. Climbing onto the chest, Stephen noticed the giant's arm had completely rotted, and the rest of the body was being eaten by insects and birds. A pool of water had formed in the giant's eye socket, creating a reflection of Stephen's shadow. It led him to a deep thought. The pain of being forgotten and lonely could be worse than physical decay. The next day, the limbs had decayed further. The body now seemed grotesque, stripped of its humanity, and had become a target for human insult and exploitation. This once magnificent creature, who resembled humans, was now being disrespected by them. In the days that followed, Stephen discovered that the giant's head had been removed. Birds and insects continued feasting. Without its head, the body didn't even look human anymore. Stephen's emotional connection to the giant faded. After that, he stayed away for a while. When he finally returned weeks later, he was stunned to see the giant completely gone. Only a decayed skeleton-like grid remained. People had entirely forgotten the giant's arrival. Months later, parts of the giant had been turned into decorations, displayed in shops, circuses, and homes. One day, while riding his bicycle, Stephen spotted the skull embedded in the ground. He imagined that if he searched more, he might find bones of the nose or eyes. Stephen observed that the bones, now artifacts, were better preserved than his memories of the giant. In circuses, some body parts were on display. People who once looked upon the giant in awe now viewed him as a mere monster. But to Stephen, the giant still lived. In his dreams, he often saw the giant trying to reassemble himself and return to the sea. This film carries a deep message. Just like the giant, humans enter the lives of others, leave a mark, teach something, learn something, and then vanish. And when they do, the world forgets them. Just as we saw with the giant, who once attracted awe and wonder, now lies forgotten. The film reveals a painful truth of life. Humans are remembered only while alive, but in death, they quickly fade from collective memory. The second film, Ice Age, begins with a couple, Rogue and Gale, moving into a new apartment. As they unpack, Gale discovers an old, strange fridge left behind by the landlord. She mocks the outdated motor and wishes to replace it, but Rogue, unable to afford a new one, convinces her to keep it for now. They decide to take a break and celebrate their new home with drinks. Rogue opens the old freezer to retrieve ice but finds the cubes embedded in thick frost. When he drops one cube into his drink, he notices something bizarre inside, a tiny creature frozen in the ice. Stunned, he shows it to Gale, who examines it with a magnifying glass. They realize it's not just a small animal, but part of an ancient civilization, with spears sticking out of its tiny body. Intrigued, they remove more ice cubes, revealing a whole miniature world inside the freezer. Time inside the freezer moves rapidly. What seems like a second in the real world is a week in theirs. As the couple watches, they see the tiny civilization evolving quickly, moving from the Middle Ages to the Industrial Age in what feels like minutes. The people in the freezer look up at Rogue and Gale and perceive them as giants or even gods, though they seem unbothered by their presence. Rogue buries the small creature they found, but Gale mocks him for being sentimental. When they return to the freezer, the civilization has already entered the Industrial Age. Skyscrapers rise rapidly, and the small people continue to live their lives, unaware of their observers. Rogue feels nostalgic, missing the simplicity of their earlier stage. As time flies, the couple hears the tiny citizens complain about the giants, and even about things like broccoli stuck in Gale's teeth, showing how closely they're being observed. Then, the city transforms into a futuristic metropolis with flying cars and glowing towers. Suddenly, a strange light appears, a weapon, a launcher, and it fires. Rogue is knocked back by the blast, his face slightly burned. When they peer into the fridge again, they realize a war has begun inside. Horrified, they shut the freezer door, hoping to stop the destruction. Later, they try to enjoy a pizza while debating whether to look again. Eventually, curiosity gets the better of them. When they reopen it, they find the war has ended and the city has healed. Now it's even more advanced, gleaming with flying cars and beautiful structures. They watch in awe as the civilization condenses into a single pyramid-like structure connected by lines of energy. The entire city is absorbed into this pyramid, which explodes into a radiant wall of energy, releasing shimmering sparks that scatter through their kitchen. These glowing orbs, like fireflies, float for a while before returning to the freezer and vanishing. Gale believes everything is gone forever, but Rogue holds out hope that they will return. Turning off the fridge, the couple embraces, overwhelmed by what they've witnessed. The next morning, life resumes, but their minds are still filled with questions. They glance at the freezer, wondering if it will happen again. Suddenly, they see tiny humans running from a dinosaur, indicating the beginning of a new cycle. Humanity has restarted from scratch. Once again, the couple becomes captivated, watching the early stages of civilization unfold. The film cleverly represents humanity's journey, its evolution, destruction, and rebirth, all taking place within the confined space of a fridge. The couple's shifting reactions reflect human behavior: curiosity, carelessness, detachment, and awe. When war erupted, their first instinct was to close the fridge rather than intervene. This highlights a powerful message about humanity's tendency to turn away from disaster rather than face it. The final moment, where energy sparks emerge and vanish, symbolizes the erasure of human history. The fridge becomes a metaphor for civilization, while the couple reflects human indifference and emotional shifts. The film ends as the world inside the fridge resets, showing the eternal cycle of birth, growth, decay, and rebirth. Both films leave us with the same haunting thought: how quickly greatness is forgotten and how fragile the legacy of life can be.